How's it going, everybody? This is Cameron White with White Light Astrology, giving you guys your July 2019 horoscope for Aries, Sun, and Rising. Thank you guys so much for being here and liking and sharing and commenting, subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you guys. And I'm sending you all of the most positive energy I have for you guys this month because July, we're finally here in the middle of 2019 and it's getting pretty rough this month. And this is going for every single sign. So let's go ahead and dive right into it. The first thing that we've got going on in July is on July 1st, we have Mars entering Leo. And for you, Aries, this is entering your 5th house. Now, Mars is the planet of our action and our intentions and where our drive comes from. However, it also really deals with where we're feeling frustrated, where our anger can kind of come from, and how we act that out in times. Now, Mars is going to be entering the fiery hot sign of Leo, which is about our identity, our expression of self. This has to do with our egos. This has to do with our own, proudness, and as well as our, trying to think of another better word for Leo, like our heart and our loyalty. So while Mars goes into Leo, you guys can definitely be feeling more eager to address those needs and to confront situations that call upon, engaging with yourself, engaging with your identity, and engaging on your pride. However, Mars is also entering your 5th house, and the 5th house is all about love and sex and children and your hobbies and your creativity. So this month, while Mars is transiting Leo, you can definitely feel a little bit more encouraged to take some more actions with, if you have some hobbies or some creative outlet that you like to pursue, as well as this may be a time to bring your attention and focus to your children if you have children. However, basically in any regard, Mars transiting Leo through your 5th house is definitely more of this month. You're going to feel a little bit more charged up to take action on the things that are a little bit more funner. And, if you feel a certain way and you feel like doing it, that's just how it's going to be. Now, the next day on July 2nd, that's when we're getting the solar eclipse in Cancer. And we do have a lot going on this month. However, the solar eclipse in Cancer is definitely going to start things off to a pretty big start. Now, this is eclipse season that we're starting to get into, and the next 2 weeks after this are going to be weird. However, during an eclipse, what you have, or during a solar eclipse, is when you have the moon eclipsing the sun. And usually when you have a new moon, this is focusing the light and centering it on one certain area. This is kind of cutting that light out and maybe bringing up some issues around what needs to be addressed, what needs to be brought to attention there. Eclipses are kind of like big exclamation points that kind of emphasize whatever's going on in that area. And while we do have this solar eclipse in Cancer, this is happening in your 4th house. And the 4th house is all about family and your home life, your private life, where you're living and how you center yourself. Now, with this eclipse happening in Cancer, as I'm sure you guys have seen with the North Node transiting Cancer, this has a lot to do with where are the needs for your home, where are the needs to center yourself, and where does that need to be focused at. This eclipse is definitely going to bring some kind of like almost Mercury retrograde type issues, even though Mercury won't be retrograde yet. I would definitely expect a big emphasis to go that way. However, with these being eclipses, when the light is getting cut out, don't expect don't expect things to happen necessarily the way that you want them to, but expect, exclamation points. Like this is going to be more of something to draw your attention and focus on into. And then the next day on July 3rd, that's when we have Venus entering Cancer. Now, Venus is, of course, the planet of love and relationships, of value. She's wanting to bring you to the greater things that you enjoy. She's wanting to have a good time in Gemini. However, as she leaves Gemini and goes into Cancer, this is when Venus really starts to value more of what is, I don't want to say just emotional, but what has more nostalgia to it, what has more sentimental value to things. Where do we need to take care of ourselves? Where do we need to love ourselves more? Where do we need to show more empathy? And where do we need to protect more of the things that we value? And while Venus goes through Cancer, this is going to be going into your 4th house of your home and your family life and where you center yourself, how you center yourself, where you're living. There's a lot of attention being brought onto attending to the needs of that area in your life through a Venusian manner. So this is really positive energy and news just for your home and your family life, especially regarding the eclipses that we're going to be going through there. Now, couple days later, I know that was just the first 3 days of July, we have Mercury stationing retrograde in Leo, and I did a whole video about that, so make sure you check it out. However, as Mercury retrogrades in your 5th house of Leo, this is definitely re-identifying with more of the things that you want to create and what more of your passion and interest kind of manifest into. Mercury retrograde in the 5th house may have to deal with some children problems, like, miscommunication with your kids or so on and so forth. However, as Mercury retrogrades in your 5th house, this is a really big time to look at where you're expressing yourself, how you're expressing yourself, and what needs to change about that that's more in alignment with your personality, that's more true to your authentic self. Also, this is when Mars conjoins Mercury too, so this brings a little bit of an agitation, a little bit of a spice and a flair to this. So you may have some exciting news in this area, as well as you might have a big switch up in this area. So my biggest advice is just keep on the lookout for Mercury retrograde. And then nothing really happens for a while until we get to July 16th. And that's when we have the lunar eclipse in Capricorn, as well as Venus opposing Saturn. And this is a pretty big deal because, as I said, with eclipses during this 2-week period, we're going to be in eclipse season. Things are weird. Nothing makes sense. And this eclipse is happening in Capricorn, though, where the moon should be full, but it's going to get eclipsed by the Earth. And this is when there should be light on an axis to bring understanding. That kind of gets cut out for a second. And while this is the moon being in Capricorn, it's going to be right next to the South Node, right next to Saturn, right on top of Pluto. It's a pretty damn gnarly full moon eclipse that's happening. And this is happening in your 10th house. And in regards to the solar eclipse that we had in Cancer just a few weeks before this, about attending to your needs and drawing focus and attention onto where you need to center yourself, your living situation, all of that good stuff. And this comes to the best way to put it is, while this is all happening in your 10th house of your career, your vocation, I'm sure as you have been noticing for the past little while, a lot of changes have happened in that area. And this eclipse is kind of going, where do you need to step away from the structures and the realities and the framework that you've created in this area in order to address these needs? And the only way you're going to be able to meet that and match that is to go back and look at where can you and strengthen yourself on the framework and how you really solidify yourself within your career so you can make the changes necessary to bring in more of the things that you need to yourself. Also, on July 16th, we're going to have Venus oppose Saturn, and this is Venus in Cancer going, hey, this is what I need to take care of, and I value this, in the opposition of Saturn in Capricorn saying, even though you need it and you want it, things aren't just you don't have the capability to necessarily achieve that. And I'm not saying there's the best way to put it is it's a big fat no, but what's important about this is that while Saturn is retrograde, Venus is in Cancer, we've got some stuff going on later on next month. This is about addressing what those needs are, what those wants are, and figuring out how to relay your situation in a way that you will get those needs met. Venus opposing Saturn is kind of like, even though you might want this, the cold, hard, cruel world is telling you no, that still doesn't mean that's no forever. You can get that switched around and changed. But what's important about Venus opposing Saturn is going, hey, I'm realizing what I want and I need, and I'm realizing what's getting in my way of attaining that. And just the same thing the next day, on July 17th, Venus will conjoin the North Node, where this is a lot more empowering and a lot more clarity of vision with what those wants and needs are and how you're going to better address them. Then on July 19th, Mercury retrogresses back into Cancer, where at first it was in Leo trying to figure out what it wants to say and why it needs to say it. Mercury goes back into Cancer and starts going, what needs to be expressed and what's going on the inside that needs to be protected and needs to be cared for, that needs to be later on expressed. So definitely pay attention when Mercury retrogresses back into Cancer. Then, of course, on July 21st, that's when we're going to have Mercury going Cazimi with the Sun. This is purifying Mercury. This is getting, basically the energy and the information Mercury needs to start making better sense of its situation. And as this is happening in your 4th house of Cancer, this is getting more clarity and getting more insight to what's going on with home, what's going on with your parents, what's going on with your living situation, and how are you better going to center yourself and what needs to be addressed in order to attain that. Then on July 23rd, Sun goes into Leo, where it'll be going into your 5th house, and this is just lighting up more of the fun area of your chart so you can have some more fun. Then on July 24th, the next day, that's when we're going to have Venus conjoining Mercury while Mercury is retrograde. And now that Mercury's in your 4th house and it's dealing with stuff that's going on in your home and your family life, Venus is coming up to Mercury, giving it a big hug and going like, hey, we can get these needs met. This is what you need to start valuing, and it's okay to have emotions and it's okay to realize things. This is definitely a lot more positive energy and a little bit more structural energy to kind of fix things up a little bit more in that area. But then on July 28th, that's when Venus enters Leo, and Venus goes into your 5th house. And this is even funner, because while Venus was in Cancer and she was focusing more on like, the necessity and the feelings behind things, Venus is going into Leo where she's like, hey, I need the attention. I need the admiration. I want loyalty. I deserve this stuff. Let me be more authentic. Let me be as authentic as I possibly can because I love myself and I love expressing who I am. And while Venus goes into Leo, she's entering your 5th house of children, of love and sex and romance and creativity and creation in general. So this is definitely where July is a rough month. But as we get to the end with Venus entering Leo, this is definitely bringing a lot more heated up and fun energy into the fun area of your chart. And then, of course, on July 31st, we end the month off with the new moon in Leo. By this time, Mercury will be almost stationing direct. We'll have Venus, Mars, the moon, and the sun all in Leo, starting to trine Jupiter. And then that kind of helps us kick off August to a lot more positive start. And I want to end on July 31st. This new moon in Leo is a really big time to go, who are we? How do I express myself? How do I identify myself? And how can I be more integral to that part of me? How can I be more of a leader of myself? And with this being in your 5th house, this has to do with, enjoying and expressing the things that you want and the things that make you you. This doesn't have to be, 20 layers deep, but you can make it that deep if you want to. But this could just be as simple as have more fun in your day-to-day life. But with that being said, thank you guys so much for being here and liking and watching and sharing and commenting and subscribing. I love and appreciate every single one of you, and I'll be seeing you next month.